Dark Souls is a game that needs no introduction, as its prestige precedes it. One of the reasons why Dark Souls is so beloved by gamers is because of its rich psychological depth, its dark atmosphere, cryptic and ambiguous storytelling, and punishing but fair gameplay. In this video, we shall explore the psychological themes of Dark Souls, focusing on 6 major topics of interest. Enjoy. In the very essence of Dark Souls resides a hauntingly existential question. What is the point of moving forward when there is no meaning to anything we do? Existentialism is a philosophical movement that emphasizes individual freedom, choice, and personal responsibility in a world that often appears absurd or meaningless. It explores how humans must create their own meaning through authentic living, even in the face of uncertainty, alienation, or despair. The first theme explored in this video is the inherent existentialist philosophy behind the world of Dark Souls. The entire existence of Dark Souls is decayed, cyclical, and apparently without meaning of the choice that we make. The undead characters are cursed with great power, but also with an existential dread, fated to fade into hollow madness, fed a fake prophecy promising salvation, but instead offering damnation. The player character, too, is undead, and is constantly nudged forward by perfidious schemers at worst, and noble fools at best, to rekindle a flame whose purpose is shrouded in mystery. One cannot speak of existentialism without mentioning its complement, nihilism. Nihilism is the philosophy that affirms a complete lack of meaning within the structures of the world, devoid of values or true information. The Dark Souls NPCs often support nihilistic concepts, express personal and existential loss, or have resigned themselves to their meaningless fate. This situation mirrors existential dread and the search for identity in a crumbling reality, pursuit which seems without chances of success, since the world is devoid of inherent values. This whole process reflects the psychological framework of existentialism, where the individuals are taken without their consent into a seemingly indifferent or meaningless universe, in which one, in order to survive, must forge their own principles out of dust. Like Albert Camus' famous Sisyphus pushing the boulder uphill endlessly, the MC in Dark Souls repeats over and over the same cycles of death and rebirth, without a clear resolution in sight. The world itself lacks clear answers, and the gameplay offers little. Instead, the player character is forced to confront the fears of uncertainty related to both the world and himself, and try to make something coherent out of it. Our will to continue must be stronger than the horrors of nothingness and meaninglessness all around. Dark Souls is famous, or infamous, for its difficulty. The players are expected to die repeatedly and are supposed to learn through failure after failure. At first, bosses seem insurmountable and larger than life. But over time, the mysticism behind their power fades and pattern recognition emerges. The skill is expected to improve, while self-confidence expands. Success is earned, not given. So, the second theme is growing through suffering and repetition, very much like real-life lessons. This gameplay mechanic evokes powerful primal psychological processes: resilience, perseverance, patience, and growth through strength. There's this famous saying that the game doesn't punish you for failing, it punishes you for giving up. In doing so, Dark Souls encourages us, as the players, to regulate our emotional outbursts and civilize our raw instincts through learning from adversity. The experience is also connected to the concept of flow psychology. Flow psychology describes a mental state in which a person is fully immersed in an activity with focused concentration, enjoyment, and a loss of sense of time. This phenomenon occurs when the challenge of a task is perfectly balanced with the individual's skill, creating a sense of effortless momentum. Flow is considered essential for creativity, productivity, and long-term well-being. In a world of instant gratification, Dark Souls celebrates and promotes delayed triumph. The player's perseverance mirrors real-life psychological processes of coping with hardship. It's not the absence of fear or frustration that defines personal progress and growth, but the willingness to push forward in spite of them. As we soon discover, the land of Lordran is a silent world. One can say that we, the player, are basically walking alone, as the NPCs are few and far in between, and the monsters attack us indiscriminately, almost like zombies. The large structures, ageless ruins, and unending catacombs are often devoid of music, light, or companionship. When characters do appear, they are often cryptic, depressed, confused, or near the brink of madness. The few conversations the player has leaves him with more questions than answers, and add more to our bewilderment. This gloomy and seemingly deserted environment creates a unique sense of psychological isolation. We travel alone, and we fight mostly alone, as companions are more like oddities than certainties. The little actual human interaction that we can have is through the online system in which other players can either help us or impede our progress. But this situation mostly takes us out of the game immersion, since we can almost always notice the inconsistencies of human invaders as opposed to NPC ones. Overall, the feeling of loneliness serves not only to increase immersion, but to also help us to reflect about our own lives through the prism of the desolate world that we're interacting with. Paradoxically, it's in these quiet environments that players most often are able to have introspections and learn more about themselves. One of the darkest concepts in Dark Souls is that of hollowing, which is a process that takes place when undead lose purpose, losing not just their form, but their sense of self. Their memories fade into obscurity, and what remains is a shell of the former self. This is a powerful metaphor for psychological burnout and depression, mental issues that plague a large majority of people nowadays. To hollow is to lose your identity without a possibility of gaining it back, making the undead a passive traveler in his own life, devoid of any agency or hope for redemption. Popular characters like Solaire, Siegmeyer, Crestfallen Warrior, and Laurentius each show how personality, purpose, and ambitions can preserve identity, and how, without those, one can easily hollow and lose everything. The game challenges the player to consider, what keeps us from going hollow? The answer is uncomfortable for most of us, and that is because it reaches deep into what it means to be a human being. For to progress is to suffer. In order to keep our identity intact, we need to suffer. Suffering is the very thing that allows us to retain our sanity. Once we let go, insanity takes over and will be lost forever in an abyss of painless delusion. The stress, the hardships, the constant self-nagging, all these elements and more are what keeps us moving and keeps us human. To try is to suffer, and to suffer is to stay human. Dark Souls is an excellent lesson in showing us the power of suffering and how that can help maintain our personal identity afloat. Death in Dark Souls is not a failure, it is a given. You die, resurrect, and then die again. The act of rebirthing is a profound concept found within the realm that, despite encompassing many events and activities, seems eerily static, trapped in a sort of time paradox in which death matters way less than we might intuitively expect. The age of fire, too, rises and is meant to fall. It dies and then rebirths. Although it sounds cliché, every ending is, at the same time, also a start. The adventure never truly ends, as time itself is cyclical, and the characters and events are predetermined to constantly repeat ad infinitum. This cyclical nature evokes themes of trauma repetition, reliving the event time and time again until we manage to surpass them. It mirrors the psychological loop where individuals or societies continuously repeat destructive patterns despite the desire for change and for an end to the infinite cycle. The player character, however, introduces the possibility of breaking the wheel, so to say. Whether you choose to rekindle the fire or let it fade away, the implication is the same. The cycle may persist, but your action matters. And even if you may snuff out the fire, there is no certainty that in the future another age of fire might not arise just like before. Although the title might seem a bit illogical, how can illusion lead to knowledge after all? I believe that this is exactly the point. By discovering that everything is illusory, that choice itself barely matters, we manage to transcend the epistemology of the world into nothingness. If everything is an illusion and thus fake, or at the very least uncertain, then the potential to know anything objectively, for certain, dissipates into the ether, leaving us groundless and alone. But we should not despair. On the contrary, this very act of ultimate self-destruction is the salvific act that releases us from the shackles imposed to us by an unforgiving, cruel, and essentially meaningless world. The release is, unfortunately to some, fortunately to others, is that this world is just a video game, an artistic creation of game developers that try to mimic, albeit imperfectly, the metaphysical complexities of the real world and obviously failing at it. Thankfully, the real world is not devoid of meaning, is not formed out of constant suffering, and, most importantly, is not an illusion that binds us to a fake prison. That is, unless we make it out to be. We think that the whole point, the greatest of truths, the most occultic of knowledge, of Dark Souls is to be glad that you're not in its world. Dark Souls is more than a challenging video game. It is a deeply psychological experience that has the potential to change our outlook on life. We don't just fight monsters. We fight despair. We fight suffering. We fight ourselves. In the end, Dark Souls teaches one important lesson. Keep moving forward. Keep going and never stop. In a world full of darkness and ambiguity, we must not lose sight of what is precious and important to us, our real lives. Let us not sacrifice them entirely for this game, and learn the valuable lessons that From Software provides to us. We should not let their efforts go to waste.